My earliest memory is a Christmas nativity play. I don't know if I was 3, maybe 4, I'm not sure. And just being overwhelmed. It was outdoors, summer in Australia for Christmas. And it was people as angels, choir singing, the nativity scene and wise men, and the safety and love of family. And I just remember being overwhelmed and thinking, so this is God, this is what we're here for, this is magical, this is marvellous. So yeah, that was my first experience and memory.
What happened as a result of that for you?
Well, that's my first memory. For us, Sunday school, Christian endeavour, church, twice on a Sunday was the norm. Sunday lunches, we're always discussing, what the preacher had said and what it meant for us. So it was a family that saw me incrementally, I guess, enculturated into, this is my story too, this is what I believe, this is who I am. Being an evangelical family, my father at some age, I forget which, would have knelt with me because we'd say our prayers each night and talked about the importance of faith being personal, asking Christ into my life. I have vague recollections of that. But unlike his experience, which was coming from a very nominal, non-church going as they were family, cultural Catholic but almost agnostic, I guess you'd say, background, into a dramatic experience of personal faith. Mine was, it culturally crept up on me. It just was what the family did.
Tell me about your own faith, as in faith, not religion. Tell me about your own journey,
Yeah. It was, I think, a struggle in my adolescent years between what was expected of me as a Christian in a fairly devout family and what adolescents who normally act out need to define themselves over and against family. So I had a fair bit of personal tension and struggle around that. It was resolved in one sense experientially for me. In my last year of school, I was 17, I was at a retreat camp for people who were leaders of Christian groups. And I would have to say that struggle was resolved by what I'd describe as a numinous experience. I remember in this camp that went over 5 days, an experience of physically shaking, of feeling overawed by God, by the otherness of God, by a sense that this was no longer head stuff but personal. And that for me resolved the tension of saying, it's what my family expects, I'm going through the motions, but there's nothing that I've really experienced that legitimates these words, these rituals. So that camp really did turn me around. I from that point on, had a much stronger sense of God with me, of this being authentic, of it aligning experientially with certain words, categories that were doctrinal.
So tell me about that experience. What exactly happened?
I remember being in, it was sort of like a little coffee shop we had at the camp, and I physically started shaking, and I walked out, and it was night, dark at night, in the bush, and a strong, almost blanket-like enveloping of me that soothed the shaking, gave me a sense of calm, a sense that God was there, real, personal, was with me.
Tell me about a time you doubted your faith.
Yeah, I was the mayor of a city down here, St Kilda, which has it's a catchment area for mentally ill, homeless, street prostitutes, drugs. And I was the Baptist minister by now. I was also running a legal practice. I was a lawyer minister, so I've had an unusual journey. And as mayor, I remember standing up for some of the sex workers who the police, were getting freebies from, otherwise they would charge them. Some had been murdered, some were being assaulted. The attitude was, well, they're outside the law, they bring it on themselves. And I remember standing up for them and asking a question, which is unusual for a Baptist minister, I guess, though I was a mayor. Should we look at decriminalising street prostitution to at least give these women protection? I suffered a torrent of abuse from Christians, saying, how dare I lower community standards and compromise God's holiness, Christian faith. And I remember thinking, the church is just full of judgment. My reading of the Gospels was Jesus actually mixed, celebrated even with women like that in his time. And I had at that time an offer to go into the Australian Senate, which meant I could break away from being both a Baptist minister and that institutional church. And I remember thinking, great, I'm going to cut these ties. I'm out of here. I spoke at one Easter rally, reluctantly. It was a Christian march through the city, and I'm thinking, these are probably fine people, but they still belong to this institution, the church, that's full of judgment, and I'm over it. And I remember at this Easter rally being introduced generously. You stood up for sex workers, the church gave you a hammering. We Christians here applaud you. This is actually what the gospel is about. You're one of us, you speak for us. And I remember this feeling of I was sort of over the church, maybe even my faith. I hadn't worked out if it was a faith God crisis or just an institution crisis, but those two things are hard to discriminate often when you're in it. And suddenly this sense of this people are still my mob, and their commitment, their courage, their faith to stand against the things that I'd experienced only as judgmental, I can work with, and I belong here. I chose not to go into the Senate. I chose to go back to ministry. It was a real crossroads there, and there was probably faith crisis mixed up certainly with great anger at the church, the institution. So that was one moment.
What's been your journey since then?
Look, since then I think I've reformulated and refound my faith. I have started to, because of that experience I was describing, go deeper, understand that the purpose of faith is transformation. And it's for the big things, the tough things. It's for climate change. It's for poverty. It's for dealing with greed in markets. It's also personal. It's for how I choose to believe I'm not just a biological freak in a cosmic zoo, that I'm here for a reason, that there is a destiny. And that reformulating has given me, again, new energy. So the old formulations that came to a crisis when I was mayor of St Kilda had been essentially, the task is to go around telling people to become Christians and to go to church. And isn't that what Jesus did? Well, actually, no, it's not what he did. His announcement of hope, kingdom of God, was to challenge the big things in his day. And if you like, to set the world right. The Lord's Prayer that I reflect on and the Beatitudes have now become the centre of my faith. And one translation of the Lord's Prayer, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth, is set the world right. It's actually for the big things. That's given me a whole new energy. That's a God involved in history, in the struggle against everything that cripples humanity, cripples the image of God, which is why I work for World Vision. Dirty water, not having enough food, not having access to medicines, cripples the image of God. You know, that's what I call sin. And salvation is everything that restores that crippled image. Clean water, enough food, having justice. And now I've been able to, I think in my faith, walk that personally and start to understand what the task is in terms of that personal faith, engaging in the world. So, yeah, that's been the resolution for me.
So you went back into ministry at that crossroads, and then what was the transition from ministry to World Vision?
Well, I went back. I started a thing called Urban Seed here in Collins Street, Melbourne, that fed hungry, mentally ill, homeless. We had a drug detox centre. So I engaged my faith in practical ways. For me, if God isn't involved here and now, I'm not sure where God is. Whilst I have some very good devotional, spiritual moments, if they aren't actually connected to setting the world right, I start to get lost again. World Vision literally tapped me on the shoulder. They, as a Christian development organisation, they said, your profile, I developed a bit of a public profile, can help Australians understand that there is a task to do for the world's poor, and it involves some transformation for them as donors and the journey of partnership, not just charity. So I considered it and accepted. So I've been the CEO of World Vision, having left Urban Seed and the Collins Street Baptist Church here, where I was the minister some 6 years ago. I'm most grateful for, winning first prize in the great lottery of life, that I was born here, where just by virtue of being thrown onto the stage called life here, universal health, universal education, a chance to be able to fulfill all my full potential has been possible for me. In my work, from Mozambique to Congo to tsunami-ravaged areas, you realise they drew last ticket in a lottery of life. Destiny and potential is set by virtue of where you're thrown up on this stage. And so I'm very, very grateful for that. My greatest wish is that I will be able to inspire people, and therefore out of it policies that understand a global ethic, that the world is a waterbed. You press down here, it comes up here. So the issues of justice, of dealing with poverty, of dealing with climate change are now issues for a global village. And most of my agitating, speaking, organising is really around how we find a global ethic for this century.